All right, good morning and welcome to your very first mini lesson in ninth grade composition with our new super fun distance learning. Um, and I do say that with sarcasm because I do enjoy getting to sleep in and getting to wear non-business casual clothing every day. That's fun. But what is less fun is not getting to interact with students or my colleagues on a person-to-person basis. That sucks. And I have to do a little bit more work to um, deliver you guys all the resources that you need via Schoology instead of like just passing out papers left and right. But that's okay. That's like a learning curve for me, and I'm sure it's a learning curve for you guys. So let's just hop into it because I only have 15 minutes to record this, apparently. So here we go. This unit, we were talking about adjectives. This is what we would have done had we been in school. So timeline hasn't really changed. All that's really changed is kind of the delivery method. And again, it's just a mini lesson. I would have done this in class. I would have stood up by the board and did this for you. So it's really not that much different from what we normally do. What's fun is that you guys can actually like pause this and think about stuff and like type questions on our discussion board instead of having to stop class to do those things. So that's kind of cool. So the way that I'm going to organize the unit is by quarter number and unit number and goal number. So if I hop down here, there are 6 goals for the unit on adjectives. It is quarter 4, the unit is 1, and the goals that we're working on today are 1 and 2. So you'll see this in the week 1 folder as 4, 1, 1, and 2. So by the end of this unit on adjectives, you'll be able to recognize, identify, and use adjectives in general as they appear before and after nouns. Do that same thing with articles, which are also considered a form of adjective. Do it with proper nouns and adjectives. Do it with compound adjectives. Do it with all these different types of pronouns used as adjectives: demonstrative, interrogative, possessive, and indefinite. And then recognize, use, and identify verbs as they are used as adjectives. So lots of stuff to cover this unit, but today we're going to focus on goals 1 and 2. So if we back it up to quarters 1 and 2, and then quarter 3 with me, you talked about nouns, pronouns, and verbs in those quarters. Those are considered the very necessary parts of speech that are absolutely needed for basic communication, right? So if I am communicating basic thoughts like I need food, I am in pain, Bobby is sick, I need water, all these things that you absolutely would have to say, you really only need nouns and verbs. When it gets fancy is when we want to add more details. So this is when you're getting past what you need to say and going into what you actually want to say. So in this class in particular, I push you to say what you want to say, right? You're writing a story using all of your own ideas. You're writing an essay about your neighborhood and you're using lots of details, right? You can't just say, there are houses. The tree swayed in the wind, right? You want to say, what do these things look like and how are they moving, and giving all of those details that are going to be essential for the reader to really understand the points that you're trying to get across. So adjectives and adverbs are really only to your benefit, especially with writing, because you're getting across that clearer thought. So if we talk about birds are a good example because there are so many different types of birds. Like you can't just say bird and expect that the person you're communicating to is going to know exactly what you're talking about, because their birds range all the way from little teeny tiny Tweety birds to giant hawk. So you can't just say bird and be like, yeah, a hawk, because somebody would have an entirely different visual if you hadn't given them the supporting words. So if we want to talk about all the different physical features and abilities and habits of these different species of birds, you would use adjectives and adverbs coming in week 2 or 3 to give readers the ability to understand these differences. So for example, if I said 2 majestic red-tailed hawks flew gracefully while a fluffy white chicken sat on the ground, you get a pretty good visual. So when we think about it, if I had just said hawk, you maybe would have just pictured like any old hawk. We don't really know what color it is, not really sure if it's like a big hawk, little hawk. There's a million different types of hawks. But when we say that there are two and that they're red-tailed hawks, we get this visual of there being two birds, right? One, two, and they have these little red tails. So immediately, with the use of literally two words, we now have a much clearer image of what type of bird specifically we're talking about. Same thing with a chicken, right? If I just said chicken, you think of like basic farm chicken. But when I say white fluffy chicken, you realize, oh, we're talking about an entirely different kind of chicken here, right? We're not just talking basic chicken. So when I think about a sentence without adjectives, I think clip art. And when I think of a sentence with adjectives, I think, okay, I can convey specifically what I want to talk about here. And that's what's really cool about adjectives. So when we really get into it, I think it's important, even though I know that you probably learned about adjectives back in elementary school, back in probably middle school at some points too, it's important to define what an adjective is, just so we know what we're looking for when we go into our worksheets and such. So an adjective is a word to describe a noun or pronoun to give it more specific meaning. And this process is called modification. This is a word you're going to see a ton across your assignments, and I don't want anybody to ask me what it means to modify a noun, because it's exactly what adjectives do. That you're changing something slightly. So in order to prevent that question from happening a million times, I want to make very clear what it means to modify, changing something slightly. If I said modify this paragraph in your essay, there are way too many run-on sentences. You would go in and you would slightly change those sentences, add a couple periods, couple commas, good to go, right? You're not changing the paragraph in its entirety, you're modifying it. Same with a video game. I don't really know the technicalities of this, I just know it exists. I've heard it before, right? Video game mods. I'm pretty sure it changes the gaming experience in some way. It doesn't change the whole game. You're not playing with different characters and different storyline. I mean, I honestly don't know. I should not be speaking to this when I have no knowledge on it, but I assume that it only changes the game slightly. Somebody back me up on this. And of course, you can modify a noun or pronoun, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How can we change nouns or pronouns slightly to clarify our meaning just a bit more? So throughout our lectures, I will do these lecture checkpoints just so you can see kind of where you're at. So this is the first PowerPoint. We'll do it based on what did you know coming into this about adjectives. So when you think adjectives, and I ask you to describe these beautiful giraffes, of course I had to use giraffes, they're my favorite animal. How would you describe these giraffes using 3 adjectives? So when you think adjective, what words do you think of? What describing words? So I would advise that you maybe pause the video and think about it. It's literally 3 words, not hard, probably 2 seconds of your life to pause this, and then continue on with the lecture once you have a good idea where you're at. All right, so hopefully you paused. So let's get into it. This is the easiest way that I think you can think about adjectives. They answer questions. What kind, how many, which one, and how much, right? So if I were blind and I couldn't see this picture of these giraffes and I said, describe these giraffes to me. What kind are they? How many? Which one is the tallest? How much of whatever do they have? How in comparison to something else? I don't know. It's not really a good question for this picture, but you know what I mean? It's those types of guiding questions that give you the adjective answers. So you could have said, for what kind? The tall giraffes, the skinny giraffes, the spotted giraffes. These are those obvious describing words. They're probably what you thought of when I said think of an adjective, which is good. That means you have a basic understanding of the fact that adjectives describe nouns. You also could have answered the question of how many. You could have said there's 3 of them, or there's a few of them, or there's a trio of them. You could have said which one, designating some sort of thing. If I asked the question, which giraffe is the shortest? You would have said that one, right? Are the giraffes in the field those giraffes or these giraffes? Oh, you would have said those giraffes. And you would have asked maybe which giraffe has spots? Any giraffe, right? So even though they don't seem like adjectives, they're not obvious describing words, they're not beautiful descriptive words that we think of when we think of adjectives, they're still adjectives because they're still designating something about that noun. Same with how much. This one's kind of tricky just because it's very similar to how many, but the way that I remember this one is you're just comparing it to an amount, so it's less than 4 or enough in comparison to some other amount or more than a pair, right? So that's getting really specific. So that's kind of the power of adjectives to describe. We can get right down to the nitty gritty and fully understand what's going on in this image, even if I couldn't see it. Also important to remember, there could be 2 or more adjectives to modify a word. Like this is the kind of stuff you're going to see in books. We're going to see several small fuzzy chicks are running around the farm. We're going to get tons of describing words because that's what authors do. They try to make the picture as clear as they possibly can for the reader. So we could also have adjectives coming before or after the noun. It doesn't sound as natural when they come after, but you might see it, so it's important to know. The large giraffe lives at the zoo. Large modifying giraffe. The giraffe who lives at the zoo is large. Large all the way over here, still modifying giraffe, right? We're still describing the giraffe, just with different words. Also important to know is a, and the. Not the word and, that's why I put the and symbol in there instead of the word and. But a and the, those 3 are adjectives as well. They're called articles because they are designating a noun. A bird, an apple, the washing machine. All of those things are being designated by these articles. So when we think about the word the, we have to put it in the definite article category because it is a defined thing, right? So when we think about the definition of definite, it means fixed or precise or exact. So when we put the in front of a noun, we are referring to a very specific noun. We will go to the zoo. If I said that, you probably know, oh yeah, we're talking about Como Zoo. That's the zoo we go to all the time. It's the zoo, right? A and an are both indefinite articles. So opposing to definite, it means that it's undefined or broad. It could be any zoo. We will go to a zoo. I don't know which one, but we'll go to a zoo. We will eat an apple. It's not the apple on the counter, but we'll eat some apple somewhere at some time, right? It's super broad terms. And so we're just talking about the nouns in general. So when you think a and an, think general. When you think the, think specific. And this is not something you have to memorize, but eventually you will get so familiar with it because I will put it in so many assignments that it will just come very naturally to you. So let me tell you what you're doing next. You are going in the same folder that you found this lecture in, and you are doing a worksheet. It's a Word document on adjectives, and it's going to have articles in it, so just make sure that you know that a, and the are also adjectives when you're doing your underlining and typing. You'll type directly into the document, so instead of doing like the circling and underlining business that we normally do in class, you'll just be going in and telling me, which are the adjectives. And then on the bottom part of the assignment, you'll be doing a little bit of typing your own sentences. 10 questions worth 10 points, and that will be due the beginning of the day, I guess, tomorrow. I don't know, it's hard to make things due. It's due at some point on the 31st. And then tomorrow we will cover nouns as adjectives, and that will come in the form of another video of me talking at you. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you gained something from it. And we will go forward and we will do really well, hopefully. All right, I will see you tomorrow.